am my family's biggest accident. And I like to think that I ended up being a decent accident. But today we're learning about accidents that humans made that ended up changing the world forever.
Insulting Genghis Khan's diplomats. One of the most destructive military campaigns in human history started for a basically useless reason. In the early 1200s, Genghis Khan, leader of the Mongols, was technically at peace with the Khwarezmian Empire, and the two had even fought against shared enemies. But everything changed when a Mongol trade caravan entered Khwarezmian territory and was attacked by a local governor who stole the goods and killed the merchants. Instead of going to war right away, Genghis Khan sent ambassadors to the Shah of Khwarezm to ask for justice and for the governor to be punished. But the Shah made a terrible decision. He had one of the Mongol envoys killed and sent his severed head back with the others. In Mongol culture, harming a messenger was a serious offense. It was seen not just as an insult, but as a clear act of war. Genghis Khan responded with a massive invasion. His army destroyed entire cities and completely wiped out the Khwarezmian Empire. Even the lowest estimates suggest that millions died, but the attack didn't stop there. The Mongols continued west, bringing destruction to Persia, parts of the Middle East, and even into Europe.
Yeah, Genghis Khan is known to be like the greatest conqueror of all time, like slaughtering millions and millions of people. In fact, today there's actually a large percentage of people that are descendants from Genghis Khan himself. This is kind of strange though, because yes, the guy made a mistake, but I guess it wasn't really an accident. It was more so like he made an active decision that ended up costing not just his life, but millions and millions of other people's lives. I thought this was gonna be like, oh, I slipped on a banana peel and now electronics exist. But I guess this is people like actively making decisions that ended up in retrospect being a terrible, terrible mistake.
One can say for sure what would have happened if the Shah had simply apologized and punished the governor. But what we do know is that at the time, the Mongols were busy fighting a war in China, so by killing the ambassador, the Shah may have accidentally triggered one of the most destructive military campaigns in human history. German U-110. On its first mission in March 1941, the German submarine damaged 2 Allied ships, but had to stop early after an accident with its own gun injured some of the crew. But its second mission in April and May 1941 would change the course of the war. After sinking several Allied ships in the North Atlantic, U-110 was chased by British warships. On May 9, 1941, after being hit by depth charges, the German submarine was forced to surface. This was part of a British effort later called Operation Primrose. The Allied ships surrounded the damaged U-boat. At first, the British thought the Germans would fight back and opened fire, but stopped when they realized the crew was surrendering. The German commander, Fritz Julius Lemp, saw that the submarine wasn't sinking like it was supposed to. He tried to swim back and destroy the Enigma machine, a type of encryption device used by Nazi Germany to send secret military messages. But he disappeared. No one knows for sure how he died. Meanwhile, British sailors boarded the abandoned U-110 and recovered the Enigma machine along with valuable codebooks. These gave British codebreakers at Bletchley Park a major advantage in reading secret German naval messages, especially a backup cipher known as Reservehandverfahren. To keep their success a secret, the British let U-110 sink and pretended it had gone down with everything still inside.
Yeah, there's actually a whole movie about that called Imitation Game. It's essentially about the British cracking the code of Enigma, or cracking the Enigma code, which is how the Germans actually communicated in World War II. And after they cracked the code, well, I guess I don't want to spoil the movie, but Alan Turing is the main character, and he's the one who essentially created and developed computers during World War II in order to actually decrypt the encryption. So in a way, if you think about it, this event is kind of the dawn of computers, because without that, Alan Turing would have never developed a computer to decipher the code. That's crazy.
In 774, Byzantine Emperor Constantine V launched a military campaign against Bulgaria, but it failed. However, he gained a major advantage afterward. Spies inside the Bulgarian court in Pliska were secretly giving him valuable information. The Bulgarian ruler Telerig began to notice that Constantine always seemed to know his plans. He eventually realized that his government had been infiltrated by Byzantine spies. Telerig came up with a clever plan, or perhaps Constantine was just too trusting. He sent a message to Constantine, pretending he wanted to defect to Constantinople and join him. He asked for the names of the emperor's agents in Pliska, saying he needed them to make sure they stayed safe while he escaped. Constantine believed him and gave him the list. The thing is, Telerig had no intention of defecting. Once he got the names, he executed all the Byzantine spies in his court, completely destroying Constantine's spy network in one.
Oh, I guess the mistake was the guy telling him all the names. That was actually so stupid. Bro had like 10 spies and then just gave up his entire cover and told the dude all of his spies. That was just stupid. Next up, we have the Berlin Wall fall.
Günter Schabowski had recently become the unofficial spokesperson for East Germany's ruling Politburo, which was the top decision-making body of a communist party. The government had just held a meeting where they talked about easing some travel restrictions to West Germany, but they didn't want to announce it just yet. At a press conference, Schabowski brought this up, even though it wasn't meant to be made public yet. A journalist asked when the new travel rules would take effect, and Schabowski, shuffling through his papers, didn't find an answer and ended up saying, "As far as I know, immediately." That one word changed everything. People in East Berlin, thinking the border was now open for the first time in 28 years, rushed to the Berlin Wall.
No.
Crowds gathered quickly, and the border guards were confused because they had no clear orders, but they'd also heard the press conference. Not knowing what else to do, they opened the gates and let people through. Soon it turned into a huge celebration. People were climbing the wall, crossing freely between east and west, hugging and cheering. Around 11:30 p.m. on November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall started falling. Some say Schabowski simply misunderstood. Others believe he knew exactly what he was doing.
Whoa, okay, so I know the fall of the Berlin Wall was like a big deal. Honestly, I don't know too much about it, but apparently the whole thing was a mistake, a complete misunderstanding. Bro just panicked while he was at the podium and just said that you can travel east to west immediately. The crazy part of all these too is like, these absolutely changed the entire course of history to the point where honestly, probably most people alive today wouldn't be. Like other people would be alive, if that makes sense. So though these are like silly mistakes or misunderstandings or whatever they may be, we should all be very thankful that they happened, because had they not happened, it's incredibly unlikely that we would be alive. Next, we have the Four Pests campaign.
The Four Pests campaign was one of the first major efforts under Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward campaign. Its goal was to get rid of 4 pests: rats, flies, mosquitoes, and sparrows, because they were thought to spread disease or damage crops. The worst mistake was the war on sparrows, especially the Eurasian tree sparrow, which the government blamed for eating grain. Millions of people across China, including children, were ordered to destroy sparrow nests, smash eggs, and bang pots and pans to stop the birds from landing until they died from exhaustion.
What?
This campaign, driven by propaganda and Mao's belief that man must conquer nature, almost wiped out sparrows in China. But without sparrows, insect and locust populations grew out of control, since there were no birds to eat them. These insects destroyed crops, making China's food shortage even worse. This disaster, combined with bad farming policies and environmental mistakes, helped cause the Great Chinese Famine, which killed tens of millions of people. By 1960, the government quietly stopped the anti-sparrow campaign and began targeting bedbugs instead.
Bedbugs? How do they pivot to bedbugs? Wouldn't you think that they would pivot to the things that were eating the crops then? You think like they would have had better researchers and like reports to confirm that sparrows were the issue, because clearly they were not. But it is crazy like how the ecosystem directly impacts humans. And even something that seems so unimportant as sparrows actually do matter a lot. And kind of like in the opposite effect, I know that there have been plenty of places that have been completely destroyed from bringing in new animals, like very invasive species, for example, snakes or rabbits or stuff like that. So like on one hand, it could be catastrophic to terminate a certain species. And on the other hand, it can also be catastrophic to bring in a new species. So balance is kind of everything in the ecosystem. Next up, we have Midgley Jr.'s fuel. What is that?
In 1921, while working at General Motors, Thomas Midgley discovered that adding a chemical called tetrethyl lead, also known as teal, to gasoline could stop engines from making knocking sounds. Early factories making teal saw workers suffer from hallucinations, mental illness, and even death. Still, the fuel was heavily promoted and quickly spread around the world.
What?
In the late 1920s, Midgley also helped create Freon, the first chlorofluorocarbon, or CFC, to be used as a safer cooling chemical in refrigerators. It worked well and was later used in aerosol sprays and inhalers. But many years after Midgley's death, scientists found that CFCs were damaging the ozone layer, which protects Earth from harmful UV radiation. This discovery led to worldwide bans on CFCs. At the time, Midgley's inventions seemed like smart solutions to real problems, but both unfortunately caused serious harm. A historian once said Midgley had more impact on the Earth's atmosphere than any other single human being. In 1944, after being paralyzed by polio, Midgley invented an elaborate system of pulleys and ropes to help others move him in and out of bed. But the device turned deadly. One day he became entangled in the ropes and was strangled to death, even though some say it was a case of suicide.
That's how he died, from his own invention? It's kind of poetic in a way. I can't tell if that guy was a genius or an idiot. I want to say probably a genius. Maybe a naive genius. But I thought that even still to this day, like cars and really any automobile, like anything burning gasoline is bad for the ozone layer. So, like, maybe that's not true, but apparently that was banned. But it's not, because I still drive a car. I guess they changed the way that it works. Oh, that's probably what it was. Yeah, they probably changed the way that it worked. That would actually make a lot of sense. I don't know. Apparently, cow farts are the main reason that our ozone layer is being damaged today. So what do I know?
We were seconds away from nuclear World War III, and the story is mostly unknown.
Really?
It was around midnight during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the closest the world ever came to nuclear war during the Cold War between the US and the Soviet Union. At a US military base in Duluth, a guard saw an unknown figure climbing the fence. At that time, US military planners believed that if the Soviet Union launched a nuclear attack, they might first try to sabotage American bases. Thinking this might be such an attack, the guard fired his weapon and triggered the sabotage alarm. This alarm automatically went off at all nearby military bases, but at one base in Wisconsin, called Volk Field, there was a wiring mistake. Instead of a regular sabotage alert, the alarm there set off a klaxon siren, which told fighter jets armed with nuclear weapons to take off. The pilots were on DEFCON 3, a high alert level just below full-scale war. They had been clearly told there would be no practice drills at that level, so when they heard the signal, they believed World War III had started, and they were being ordered to launch. By the time the mistake was discovered, the jets were already heading toward the runway. An officer jumped into a car, sped to the runway, and managed to signal the pilots to stop, just in time to prevent a possible nuclear war. The figure that triggered it all? It was a bear. If it weren't for that officer speeding with his car, we wouldn't be here today.
Yo, that's by far the craziest one. Are you kidding me? Yo, those pilots, like, didn't even think twice about it. I guess they just they heard the alarm. They were like, all right, game on, baby. We're dropping nukes. Without even, I guess, like, having a higher up say, like, all right, actually go. Like, actually do it. You know what I mean? Like, they just heard the alarm and they're like, okay, I'm gonna go take these nuclear explosive and go drop them on top of Russia. How insane is that? Would they have dropped them over Cuba? I don't know where they would have dropped them, but that's just so crazy that literally a bear almost triggered World War III. Holy smokes. I guess that one shouldn't count because it didn't really change anything. Like, it didn't change humanity at all. That was like an almost changed humanity.
In 1452, Orban, an engineer and iron founder from the Kingdom of Hungary, offered his help to Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI, but the empire didn't have enough money or resources to support his work. After being rejected, Orban went to the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, who was preparing to attack Constantinople. Mehmed saw the value in Orban's ideas and gave him full support. In just 3 months, Orban built a huge cannon called the Basilic. It was so massive that it took 60 oxen to pull it.
60 oxes? Like oxes? Like the buffalo things? But it's not, it's an ox? Did they not have wheels back then? That just doesn't seem practical at all. Anyway, it seems like it was very destructive.
In 1453, which led to the fall of the Byzantine Empire, which had lasted for over 1,000 years. Kim Jong-nam's Disneyland trip. Kim Jong-nam, the oldest son of North Korean leader Kim Jong-il and half-brother of Kim Jong-un, was once expected to take over the country. In the late 1990s, he held top positions in the Ministry of Public Security and worked on developing North Korea's IT systems. But everything changed in 2001, when he was caught in Japan using a fake passport while trying to visit Tokyo Disneyland. The incident embarrassed North Korea so much that his father canceled a planned visit to China and began quietly removing Jong-nam from power. Over the next several years, he lived mostly in exile, moving between China, Macau, and parts of Southeast Asia. He sometimes gave interviews to foreign media and lived a more open, luxurious lifestyle than the rest of the secretive Kim family. Intelligence agencies believed he had connections to China and may have even worked as a CIA informant. After his younger half-brother Kim Jong-un was chosen as the next leader in 2010, Kim Jong-nam was seen as a potential rival. According to South Korean intelligence, Kim Jong-un gave a standing order to have him killed. Jong-nam survived several assassination attempts and even wrote a letter asking his brother to spare his life. On February 13, 2017, he was assassinated at the Kuala Lumpur airport in Malaysia after 2 women smeared the deadly VX nerve agent on his face. The women were arrested, but claimed they thought it was a prank for a TV show. Most experts believe the killing was ordered by Kim Jong-un. While he was alive, Kim Jong-nam said the real reason he fell out of favor was his support for economic reforms and openness, ideas he picked up while studying in Switzerland.
That's the craziest one by far, especially because it was so recent. This happened in 2010. Well, I guess in the 1990s is when it started, but bro, he tried to go to Disneyland, got called out for being a grown man trying to go to Disneyland, and then he gets exiled from his country that he was supposed to run. And then it gets, I don't even know. I don't even know what to say. That is just so absurd. And it's crazy to me how different like cultures are to American culture, because in America, the most important thing as far as like status in America is how much money you make. I personally don't love that like idea. I think that there's more to humans than that, obviously, but that's like the general idea is where your social status is how much money that you make. But in communist countries where the government owns everything, they own all the houses, they own all the farms, they own all the buildings, they own everything. The way to like gain social status in those countries is to present yourself in a reasonable and respectful manner, as far as like dressing yourself nicely and politely, acting respectful, making sure your house is clean when you have people over, things like that. And South Korea, I'm like 99% sure, is a communist country. So like in America, for example, if someone tried to go to Disneyland and got called out for having a fake passport, it would be like a weird thing. It'd be like, yo, that's kind of like, what even is that? That's strange. But you wouldn't get exiled and assassinated. I can't even wrap my mind around that. Like, I don't know. Like this, he could have been a terrible human, an awful human, whatever. I have no idea. But he looks like a nice guy. Look at him. He looks like a nice guy. So Kim Jong-un is the, whatever it is, prime minister or the president or whatever it is of South Korea because his half brother went to Disneyland. Wow, that is absurd. All right, next up we have Rome's trust.
Publius Quintilius Varus.
That is the most absurd name I've ever heard in my entire life. Publius Quinarius Tabulus. That sounds like if you've ever seen the Key and Peele college football introduction. I gotta show you guys. Key and Peele football names.
DeMarcus Williams, University of Georgia.
T.J. Jackson, Wayne State University.
Tavarius Smith King, Merrimack College.
Todd Royal, Smoochie Wallace, University of Miami.
Esquarius Green Jr., University of Notre Dame.
Ibrahim Moises, University of Tennessee at Chattanooga.
Jack Marius Tactheratrix, Michigan.
Now, bro, just imagine this guy popping in there.
Publius Quintilius Varus, a Roman general in charge of the new province of Germania, trusted one of his own officers, a Germanic noble named Arminius. Arminius had been trained in Rome and served in the Roman army, but he was secretly working to unite the Germanic tribes against Roman rule. That summer, as Varus and about 15,000 to 20,000 Roman soldiers marched back to their winter base, Arminius told him there was a small local rebellion that needed attention. Varus believed him and led his army into a dense, remote forest. There, the Roman troops were stretched out, slowed by bad weather and unable to fight in formation. Then, Arminius set off the trap. Over several days, the Roman legions were ambushed by Germanic warriors who knew the land and had set up hidden defenses. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest in 9 AD started. Almost the entire Roman force was wiped out, and Varus committed suicide during the battle. The loss was so devastating that Rome gave up its plans to conquer land beyond the Rhine River.
Whoa.
Emperor Augustus never again pushed for expansion into northern Germany. The legions destroyed in the battle's numbers were never used again. Many of the Germanic tribes that would later invade and weaken the Western Roman Empire came from this very region that Rome failed to control after Teutoburg.
I think bro got double agented. GG. Germany D-Day. This is something I definitely should know more about.
In the months before D-Day, German commanders disagreed about where the Allied invasion would happen. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt believed it would come at Pas de Calais, the closest point between Britain and France, with key ports and a direct route into Germany. Erwin Rommel, in charge of coastal defenses, also focused on Calais, but warned that the Allies could land anywhere, including Normandy, where they eventually did land. Hitler, as usual, couldn't make up his mind. He split the German tank divisions between the two plans, placing some too far inland to help Rommel quickly, but not far enough to act as a proper mobile reserve as Rundstedt wanted. In the end, neither commander got what they needed. Meanwhile, the Allies launched a deception campaign called Operation Fortitude, tricking the Germans into thinking the real attack would be at Calais. Even after the Allies landed in Normandy on the 6th of June 1944, German leaders, including Hitler, thought it might just be a distraction. Rommel happened to be away visiting his wife for her birthday that day, and other officers were also off duty because of bad weather forecasts. Rundstedt asked for permission to—
You could get off duty because it was raining? And because it's your wife's birthday? They're in the middle of World War II. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, yeah, celebrate your girl. You know what I'm saying? Get her flowers, all that stuff. Unless it's World War II, and you're in the middle of the biggest war the world has ever seen. That seems insane to me. Or because it's raining out, you have to take off? What?
Reinforcements, but Hitler delayed the decision. By the time a counterattack was approved, Allied air forces had already damaged German supply lines and troop movements, and the German command structure was falling apart. Despite fierce resistance, the Allies secured 5 beachheads on D-Day and brought in over 150,000 troops.
Oh my.
Rommel later tried to tell Hitler that Germany's defenses were collapsing, but Hitler refused to believe it. Then, on the 17th of July, Rommel was seriously injured when Allied planes attacked his car. With Rommel out and confusion still spreading through the German leadership, Germany lost its chance to stop the invasion.
GG. Honestly, it's hard for me to feel bad about that one because, you know, it was Hitler's army. So it's like, you know, I don't know. I'm no war expert though, so I have no idea. Next up, we have the Russia's Alaska sale in
1867. The Russian Empire sold Alaska to the United States for $7.2 million.
Thanks, guys.
About 2 cents
Appreciate
per acre.
you.
After losing the Crimean War, Russia feared it couldn't defend Alaska in a future war, especially against Britain, whose forces were nearby.
Shout out Britain. Thank you, Britain.
Selling the territory to the U.S. was seen as a way to block British expansion. At the time, many Americans mocked the deal as Seward's folly, as the negotiations were led by U.S. Secretary of State William Seward. They called Alaska a useless, frozen wasteland. The purchase gave the U.S. strategic access to the Pacific and added territory more than twice the size of Texas, full of natural resources like oil and various minerals and metals.
Yeah, Alaska actually turned out to be unbelievably profitable. I don't know why he didn't say like how much it's worth today, because it's probably worth like billions of dollars today. So that ended up being a phenomenal deal for the US because that's where we're able to mine a ton of oil. A lot of people don't know this, but US is actually one of the biggest oil mining countries in the world. And so the US like exports so much oil that it makes so much money from it. So without Alaska, there's no way that we would be able to do that as well, at least.
When Alexander the Great died in 323 BC, he left behind the largest empire the world had ever seen, but no clear successor. His only direct heir was an unborn child, and his half-brother Aridaeus had serious mental disabilities. Without a stable plan for who would rule next, Alexander's top generals, known as the Diadochi, rushed to grab power. What followed was nearly 50 years of brutal conflict called the Wars of the Diadochi. These former allies, who had once helped Alexander conquer lands from Greece to India, turned on each other. They formed shifting alliances, betrayed one another, and fought bloody civil wars to control pieces of the empire. The result was the permanent breakup of Alexander's empire into rival kingdoms and decades of war across the ancient world. One by one, most members of the royal family, including his son Alexander IV, were murdered during the power struggles. By 281 BC, his empire had broken apart into several major rival kingdoms. The long-term effects were huge. Alexander's dream of a unified empire connecting East and West died with him. Instead, the split led to centuries of regional conflict and helped pave the way for the rise of Rome. All of it happened because one of history's greatest conquerors failed to plan for what would happen after his death.
I don't know how you don't plan for that. Like, just say, like, have in writing somewhere, you're gonna be in charge next when I die. I don't know how that's even a question. I will say, though, that I don't really think it would have mattered as far as, like, keeping that empire together, especially back then, because owning that much territory is almost impossible to govern for an extended period of time, which is why there's so many smaller countries in the world. But especially back then, because traveling took so long. Like, when you had that much land, to get from one side to the other would take probably months, if I had to guess. And so, for example, if there was an uprising in the east side of your country and you were in the west side of the country, to go even hear news about that, not even go get there, but to receive word that something is going on in the east side of your country, it would take you months to even know that something was happening. And then, of course, it would take months to go get there and actually deal with the situation. And so my point is, specifically back then, when there wasn't the technology that we have today, there wasn't phones, there wasn't whatever, Wi-Fi, there wasn't vehicles to actually travel the world quickly, it was nearly impossible to own a big piece of land. Point being, I don't think it really made a difference as far as whether or not his empire would have continued much longer after his death anyway.
Christopher Columbus's discovery of the Americas happened because of a major mistake. At the time, many scholars already had a pretty good idea of the Earth's actual size, thanks to earlier work by thinkers like Eratosthenes.
Bro's got a
But Columbus
megadome.
rejected those accurate estimates. He wrongly believed the Earth was much smaller than it really is, and thought Asia stretched much farther east than it does. Based on this wrong math, Columbus argued that Japan could be reached by sailing west from Europe in just a few weeks. Most experts disagreed and believed the trip would be far too long. Still, the Spanish crown decided to fund the voyage, impressed by his confidence and calculations. Ironically, if Columbus had used the correct numbers, the journey would have seemed too long and too risky, and he probably never would have set sail. In the end, it was only because of his miscalculation and the surprise presence of the American continents in the way that his voyage succeeded.
I'm surprised he didn't turn back then, because if he was so confident that it would only take a couple weeks to get to where he thought that he was going, I think it took him months to actually get to North America. I'm surprised that not only him, but like his entire crew were, I guess, confident enough or crazy enough to just keep on going. Because to them, they didn't even know that North America existed at all. So once they realized that they were wrong and that all the other experts were correct, then they probably would have had to realize like, oh, you know what? We actually are going all the way around the world to get to Japan, which according to the calculations would have taken probably like a whole year. Just imagine going straight west and North America not being there and having to go all the way around the Atlantic, North America, and the Pacific Ocean to get to Japan. So Christopher Columbus is actually insanely lucky that North America ended up being there, because if not, well, he would have died for sure.
The Treaty of Versailles was signed in 1919, after World War I, and it placed very tough conditions on Germany that affected the country's future and possibly changed the path of world history. The treaty forced Germany to take full blame for the war, give up land, greatly shrink its military, and pay huge amounts of money to the Allied powers. Many Germans felt these demands were unfair and deeply humiliating, especially because they had expected peace talks to follow US President Wilson's more generous 14 points. The British economist John Maynard Keynes called the treaty a Carthaginian peace, meaning it was designed to crush Germany rather than build lasting peace. He warned that the harsh financial penalties would hurt both Germany and Europe. In Germany, the feeling of injustice was widespread. Millions of ethnic Germans ended up living outside the country's new borders, and the loss of land and military strength fueled anger and nationalism. This frustration helped extremist politics grow, especially during the Great Depression when Adolf Hitler rose to power. While the treaty was not the only reason for World War II, its harsh terms and the way people remembered them played a big part in the rise of Nazism.
Yo, that's actually crazy. I've heard of a lot of these terms, like the Treaty of Versailles and some of the other stuff that has been gone over in today's video, but I'm realizing now that I'm not very well educated in exactly what everything is. But turns out the treaty, quote unquote, ended up being an awful deal, supposedly at least, for Germany and a lot of Europe, to the point where that was the cause of World War II, which is quite ironic. Next up, we have the Maginot Line.
The Maginot Line was a large
Line.
system of defenses that France built along its border with Germany after World War I. It was not meant to make France completely safe, but to slow down a German attack, give France time to get its army ready, and keep future battles away from French land. The line was built in the 1930s, partly because Germany was becoming stronger, and France could not count on help from Britain or the United States. France had fewer young men after World War I, and chose a defensive plan to make up for its smaller army. The Maginot Line ran from Switzerland to Luxembourg and had underground bunkers, big guns, and strong fortifications. But it did not protect the Ardennes Forest or the border with Belgium very well, because those areas were wrongly seen as too hard for a major army to cross. In 1940, Germany avoided the line by going through Belgium and the Ardennes, surprising the Allies. The parts of the line that were attacked mostly held firm, but it had already been bypassed. After the war, people disagreed about whether the Maginot Line was a good idea.
I guess it wasn't a terrible idea. They should have just extended the line all the way up north, but they probably didn't have the resources for that. A lot of these things are like, in retrospect, okay, maybe it wasn't the best idea, but the logic of a lot of these ideas does make a lot of sense, I think. That one just happened to not really pan out.
Operation Barbarossa, launched by Nazi Germany in June 1941, was one of the worst military misjudgments in history. It was supposed to be a quick and easy invasion of the Soviet Union, meant to defeat the Red Army in just a few weeks. But instead, it turned into the largest and deadliest front of World War II. At first, the Germans made huge gains, surrounding and killing or capturing hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops in places like Kiev and the Sea of Azov. By late 1941, they were close to key cities like Leningrad and Moscow. But the invasion began to stall. Cold weather, long supply lines, strong Soviet resistance, and poor planning all slowed the German advance. Leningrad was not taken, but instead was surrounded, leading to a terrible siege that killed over 1 million civilians, mostly from starvation.
My God.
Near Moscow, German forces got within sight of the Kremlin, but were pushed back by a surprise Soviet counterattack, helped by Siberian troops brought in for defense. By the end of 1941, Germany had lost over 800,000 soldiers. The failure of Barbarossa led Hitler to take direct control of the army, which often made things worse. As Germany struggled, the Soviet Union started pushing west, retaking land, and eventually gaining control of huge parts of Eastern Europe. What started as a plan to defeat the Soviet Union ended up creating the Eastern Bloc and setting the stage for the Cold War. More people died on the Eastern Front than in all other battles of World War II combined.
It's pretty crazy how many mistakes that Germany ended up making in World War II. That, like, in hindsight, had they not made those mistakes, who knows what the world would look like today. On a completely side note as well, like, I can't even fathom going to war like myself. And it's crazy to me how different lives people live than mine, and I'm assuming yours as well. I'm assuming a lot of you guys are like in school or working or whatever you're doing. For me though, like my life is YouTube. My life is making YouTube videos. That's pretty much literally all that I do. And it's crazy to me to like watch videos like this, to even try to grasp an understanding of what it would be like to live in those times and be one of those people who were storming, you know, other cities and towns and trying to conquer other land. Like that idea is like so foreign to me that I can't even wrap my head around what it would be like to actually do that. Anyway, we have another mistake from the World Wars. This one is called World War I's Wrong Turn.
The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand happened on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo. And the Archduke was killed not because of a perfect plan, but because of a mistake. Earlier that day, there had been a failed bomb attack on his motorcade. For safety, the drivers were told to change the route, but the message didn't reach them. By accident, the Archduke's car turned onto a side street, where one of the would-be assassins, Gavrilo Princip, was standing. Gavrilo was there because after the failed bomb attack, he decided to go get some food. The driver tried to reverse the car, but stalled the engine, giving Princip the perfect chance to shoot Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie at close range. That wrong turn led to far more than 2 deaths. It set off a chain reaction. Within weeks, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, alliances between countries took effect, and what could have stayed a local conflict turned into World War I.
So a wrong turn was the spark that started World War I. The world that we live in is a simulation. It's something that I'm starting to believe more and more. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed that and you want me to watch more videos similar to it, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and click right here for more.